Welcome back, scholars, to another day of history with Mr. Amador. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to continue talking about how these events that happened in the 1850s are going to tear the nation apart and going to lead the country to war with itself, the Civil War, which is going to begin in 1861. Today we're going to be looking at a Supreme Court case decision and how this Supreme Court decision about Dred Scott is going to, again, tear the country apart. We're also going to be looking at the election of Abraham Lincoln, which is another catalyst for tearing the nation apart and leading to civil war. And then finally, South Carolina becomes the first state to secede from the Union. It's going to leave the United States and start its own country. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The Dred Scott decision. In 1857, the slavery controversy shifted from Congress to the Supreme Court, so another branch of government, which was about to decide a case concerning a Missouri slave named Dred Scott. Years earlier, Scott had traveled with his owner to Wisconsin, where slavery was banned by the Missouri Compromise. When he returned to Missouri, Scott went to court to win his freedom, arguing that his stay in Wisconsin had made him a free man. There were 9 justices on the Supreme Court in 1857. 4 justices were from the South, 4 were from the North, and Chief Justice Roger Taney was from Maryland, a border state that permitted slavery. The justices had 2 key questions to decide. First, as a slave, was Dred Scott a citizen who had the right to bring a case before a federal court? And second, did his time in Wisconsin make him a free man? So we see the Supreme Court justices split, half North, half South, with the key, the Supreme Chief Justice Roger Taney being from a middle state, which is known as a border state. Maryland, which did allow slavery. And then they had to ask this question, is this case even legal? Meaning, is Dred Scott considered a citizen? We know that African-American slaves had no legal rights, so thus, therefore, could not bring a case over the Supreme Court. And then second, did his time in Wisconsin, was it long enough to make him a free man? All right. Chief Justice Taney hoped to use the Scott case to settle the slavery controversy once and for all. So he asked the court to consider 2 additional questions. Did Congress have the power to make any laws at all concerning slavery in the territories? And if so, was the Missouri Compromise a constitutional use of that power? Nearly 80 years old, Taney had long been opposed to slavery, so he was against it. As a young Maryland lawyer, he had publicly declared that slavery is a blot upon our national character, and every lover of freedom confidently hopes that it will be wiped away. Right? So powerful quote there. Taney had gone on to free his own slaves, and many observers wondered whether he and his fellow justices would now free Dred Scott as well. 2 judicial bombshells. So, on March 6, 1857, Chief Justice Taney delivered the Dred Scott decision. The Chief Justice began by reviewing the facts of the Dred Scott's case, and then he dropped the first of 2 judicial bombshells. By a vote of 7-2, the court had decided that Scott could not sue for his freedom in a federal court because he was not a citizen, because he's a slave. Remember, slaves did not get rights that other citizens got. Nor, said Taney, could Scott become a citizen because no African American, whether slave or free, was an American citizen or ever could become one. How crazy is that? And then second, so that's a huge bombshell. And then the second bombshell is that Taney declared that the court had rejected Scott's argument that his stay in Wisconsin had made him a free man. The reason was simple. The Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional, meaning Congress did not have the power to pass that Missouri Compromise. It has no authority to do that. All right, and then here's a drawing of Dred Scott in the Supreme Court. All right, people are going to freak out over this. So, Taney argued that the slaves were property and that the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution said that property could not be taken away from people without the due process of laws. That's that Bill Amendment. That is, a proper court hearing. Taney reasoned that banning slavery in a territory was the same as taking property from slaveholders who would bring their slaves into that territory, which was unconstitutional. Rather than banning slavery, he said, Congress had a constitutional responsibility to protect the property rights of slaveholders in a territory. Huge bombshell. Saying like the government cannot end slavery, does not have that power because it's considered property and that property must be protected. So, the Dred Scott decision delights slaveholders. This is a huge win for slaveholders. And they hope that at long last, the issue of slavery in the territories had been settled and in their favor. So, the South loves this decision because it now, looking at this map, now all territories are open to slavery. They can't make, so all those laws like the Kansas-Nebraska Act, Missouri Compromise, Compromise of 1850, those are all thrown away after the Dred Scott decision, which says, you know what, the government actually cannot decide whether it's free or slave. So everything is going to be opened up to slave territory. And this is going to make Northerners freak out. All right, many Northerners, however, were stunned and enraged by the court's rulings. The New York Tribune called the decision a wicked and false judgment. The New York Independent expressed outrage in this bold headline. Look at this, March 7th, so the day after. The decision of the Supreme Court is the moral assassination of a race and cannot be obeyed. What does that headline mean? The decision of the Supreme Court is the moral assassination of a race and cannot be obeyed. Go ahead and answer that question. All right, so again, looking at this map, we see the green are the free states. This like kind of purplish color is our slave states. And now the whole rest of the United States is now open to slavery. Wow. All right, let's go ahead and continue. But things are going to keep getting crazier. All right, so from compromise to crisis. During the controversy over the Kansas-Nebraska Act, anti-slavery activists from the Free Soilers and once popular Whig Party formed a new political organization, the Republican Party. So this is the Republican Party that we have today. It was Free Soilers, people who were against slavery, and then the once popular Whig Party, which kind of was like more about like keeping hands off business, like let business run, and the government kind of stays out. All right, let's keep going. The Republicans were united by their beliefs that no man can own another man, that slavery must be prohibited in the territories, that all new states must be free states, and that the rights of our colored citizen must be protected. So, Republican Party kind of sounding a lot, sounding a lot different than the rhetoric they've been pushing in the past 40 years or so, where they're talking about how there's got to be a lot of social justice that needs to happen, right? We need to protect the rights of our colored citizens, and we need to get rid of slavery everywhere, especially in new states. All right, in 1858, Republicans in Illinois nominated Abraham Lincoln to run for the Senate. In his acceptance speech, Lincoln pointed out that all attempts to reach compromise of the slavery issue had failed. Quoting from the Bible, this is a great quote, he warned, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." I'm going to say that again. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Lincoln went on, "I believe this government cannot endure, permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the union to be dissolved, means like fall apart. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. All right, scholars, I want you to go ahead and answer. What did Abraham Lincoln mean with this quote? What does he mean when he says a house divided against itself cannot stand? I believe this government cannot last, permanently half slave, half free. And he says it's going to become all one thing or all the other. What is he talking about here? What do you think he means? Go ahead and answer that question. All right, the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Lincoln's opponent in the Senate race was Senator Stephen Douglas, an Illinois senator who saw no reason why the nation could not go half slave and half free. And when Lincoln challenged him to debate this slavery issue, Douglas agreed. All right, so after the speech that he gave, a lot of people are starting to like Lincoln, but the senator who's in charge there at the moment is Stephen A. Douglas, the guy who came up with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And Stephen A. Douglas says the country. I don't agree with you, Abraham Lincoln. I think the country can last half slave, half free. So him and Lincoln are going to meet in a series of debates, and they're going to argue this issue. So during the Lincoln-Douglas debates, Douglas argued that the Dred Scott decision had put the slavery issue to rest. But Lincoln disagreed. In his eyes, slavery was a moral, not a legal issue. He declared, the real issue in this controversy is the sentiment of one class, that's a group of people, that looks upon the institution of slavery as wrong, and of another class that does not look upon it as wrong. Lincoln ends up losing this election for Senate, but the debates were widely reported, and they helped make him a national figure. His argument with Douglas also brought the moral issues of slavery into sharp focuses, not legal, but moral. Is this the right thing to do? So compromises over slavery were becoming impossible, which is why it's going to end up with a civil war, because the time for compromises were ending, and it's now full-on crisis mode. All right, here's a picture of Abraham Lincoln, young, no beard, no hat, giving the debate, and here's Stephen A. Douglas in the background. All right, so, didn't mean to put that there twice. John Brown's raid. So while Lincoln fought to stop the spread of slavery through politics, abolitionist John Brown adopted a more extreme approach. Rather than wait for Congress to act, Brown planned to seize, that means take, the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. An arsenal is a room, like over here, you see in this picture, where they keep a bunch of guns, ammunition, cannons, things like that. So he's going to go and capture all those. John Brown's plan is to go and capture all of those weapons from the federal government at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. It says right here, an arsenal is a place where weapons and ammunition are stored, and Brown wanted to use the weapons to arm slaves for a rebellion that would end slavery. So I don't know if y'all remember John Brown. Him and his 4 sons and his son-in-law and like 2 other friends, they're going to go down to Kansas, and they're after the attack on Lawrence, Kansas, they're going to seek revenge at Potawatomi Creek, and they're going to hack 5 pro-slavery settlers to death by this creek. So John Brown really hates slavery, and he sees that the only way to end slavery is through violence, through killing. So in 1859, Brown launched his raid. It was an insane scheme during which many of his men were either killed or captured. All 4 of his sons were killed, I think, or 3 of them. On the day of his hanging, so they all get caught. Brown himself was convicted of treason and sentenced to die. On the day of his hanging, he left a note that read, "I, John Brown, am not quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will be purged away, but with blood," saying that America is never going to is not going to be able to pay for the crime of owning slaves unless blood is spilled. Such words filled white Southerners with fear because it was Southern blood that would be spilled if a slave rebellion began. The fact that many Northerners viewed Brown as a hero also left white settlers uneasy. And I meant to put a picture of John Brown, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So, John Brown, the South saw him as a terrorist. They see John Brown as a terrorist, while the North see him as a hero. And here's John Brown right here. Go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. There's another famous photo of him like kind of kissing a slave baby or something like that. I'll see if I can try to find it. Yeah, I mean it was fake, and they drew it because that didn't actually happen, but super interesting. All right, y'all, go ahead and you're gonna head to Google Classroom. You're gonna have 5 minutes to complete your first cycle of your independent practice, and then y'all are gonna get into the election of 1860, and then the Battle of Fort Sumter, which is going to start the Civil War, and then we're gonna be jumping into the Civil War the next couple weeks. All right, I'll see y'all back here on Wednesday.